Hi, friends. It's Bible Class Betty here. And today we're wrapping up Ruth's incredible journey. And trust me, the ending is worth the wait. Oh, in chapters 3 and 4, Ruth takes a bold step of faith, and God responds with a beautiful blessing that changes history. Well, first, remember, we got to start with a couple of our vocabulary words. Now, some of these words are new to us, and some of them mean a little something different now than they did in Bible times. And this will help make sure that we understand what we're reading. Our first word is acquire. Acquire. Why, the girl acquired ice cream using her allowance. Acquire means to get something, either by working for it, receiving it, or earning it. Acquire. Cloak. Why, cloak is a loose outer garment, like a coat. Fair. Why, fair might mean how someone did or what happened to them, especially after something important or challenging. Why, how did you fare in last week's race? Impair. Impair. Why, impair means to weaken or damage something, making it less strong or less useful. Parcel. Parcel. Why, a parcel is a specific piece of land that has clear boundaries and can be owned, sold, or used. Parcel. Redeemer. Redeemer. Oh, it's a relative who buys back at his own expense, recovers, or a ransom for something. Why, he gives it up to save or to return something very important. Threshing floor. Oh, I bet you don't hear that very often. Why, a threshing floor is a floor or a space for, well, threshing or treading out grain to separate the seeds from the harvested plant. You might think of the plant growing up like grass, but those little seeds are what you want. So somehow you've got to separate those seeds from the plant. You do that on a threshing floor. It's got to be kind of protected because you don't want that to just blow away. Winnow. Winnow. Why, winnow is to expose the grain to a current of air to remove the waste. So between two screens, she's got those extra pieces so the seeds don't get lost, but any of that extra grass around them could float away, and then you're left with the good seeds you could use to make grain. That's winnowing out the seed. Well, this is going to be Ruth's reward. Remember how she's been so faithful to her mother-in-law, Naomi? Let's review what's happened in the last few chapters before we all tied up and his head shaved clean. Samson has his final revenge in Judges 16. Micah has a shrine like no one has ever seen. He makes a Levite his priest in Judges 17. The Danites rob Micah clean, stealing his idol and priest in Judges 18. A concubine beaten and killed so extreme, cut into 12 pieces in Judges 19. 400,000 men with swords, that seems plenty, to take on the Benjamites in Judges 20. Not enough wives for everyone. Women taken from Jabesh Gilead in Judges 21. Naomi's husband is dead, and both of her sons in Moab alone, begins Ruth chapter 1. A return to Jerusalem where there is food to chew, gleaning in Boaz's field in Ruth chapter 2. Well, the events recorded in the book of Ruth happened during the period of the Judges. Most scholars place this between 1450 BC and 1000 BC. King David's birth, is dated at about approximately 1040, which would place Ruth's story in about 1100 years before Christ. Ruth too mentions that the barley and the wheat harvest are in Israel. Barley and wheat were planted in the autumn and ripened in the spring. Barley ripened faster and was ready for harvest in around April, and the wheat would typically be harvested in May. Well, most of these events now are going to take place in Jerusalem and Bethlehem area, because remember, Naomi and Ruth have moved back from Moab to the land of Bethlehem, Naomi's home. In this story, we're going to keep talking about Naomi, that Israelite widow whose daughter-in-law was Ruth. And then Ruth, of course, was the Moabite woman who became a widow after the death of her husband. Now, Boaz is a relative of Naomi's husband. He's described as a worthy man. Open up your Bibles to Ruth chapter 3, and we're going to get started. The first two chapters of Ruth set up the problem. Naomi and Ruth are both without husbands and children, and they must face the reality of, starvation, unless they can find a way to provide for themselves with provisions and protection. The following two chapters reveal a possible solution to their problem. We have already met all of the characters, and it's refreshing to know that they all continue to act honorably and with dignity throughout the remainder of the book. Ruth and Boaz at the threshing floor. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to Ruth, "My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you?" Rest. You keep having to go out and glean all this food. Is not Boaz our relative, and whose women you were? See, he is on the winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Wash, therefore, and anoint yourself, put on your cloak, and go out to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. Because Ruth chose to stay with Naomi, Naomi now feels, responsible for guiding and giving motherly advice to Ruth. Naomi realizes that if Boaz could be convinced to become their kinsman redeemer, he could provide them everything they could ever desire. Boaz would have the power to restore the family proper and to perpetuate Elimelech's name by providing an heir. Although Boaz had been kind to Ruth so far, there is no indication that he would be willing, to be her husband or a kinsman redeemer. Naomi advises Ruth that it would be best to approach him privately and to present her best self, which was washed and perfumed, and in her best clothing, not smelly from gleaning. Also she advises her to wait until he's feasted and is in the best possible mood. Sounds like good advice. But when he lies down, observe where he goes and then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do." And she replied, "All that you say, I will do." So she went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had commanded her. Now it would be dark before all the work was done, and Naomi knew that the grain would have to be guarded. So after the harvest festivities were done, Boaz would likely lie down where he could keep an eye on his harvested crops till morning. Ruth was to pay attention to where he settled down for the evening. And when Boaz had eaten and had drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. Then she came softly and uncovered his feet and lay down. At midnight the man startled and looked over, and behold, there was a woman down by his feet. Well, spreading a man's garment over a woman is, well, symbolic of protection, like offered in marriage. It is even part of a wedding ceremony among the Arab people. So Ruth's action would have been an obvious request for marriage. When Boaz stirs at midnight, he's surprised to find a woman at his feet. And he said, "Who are you?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings, your garment, your covers over your servant, for you are a redeemer." Oh, and he said, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. You have made this last kindness greater than the first one. Why, you have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you ask, for my fellow townsmen know that you are a worthy woman." In the darkness, Boaz asked for a verbal confirmation of the identity of the woman at his feet. Ruth calls herself a servant, emphasizing the fact that she is making the request with a humble heart. Boaz is flattered that she has chosen him over the young men. He tells her that she is a woman of noble character. The word worthy here is the same word used to describe the ideal wife in the book of Proverbs. And now it is true. I am a redeemer, yet there is a redeemer nearer than I. Remain tonight, and in the morning, if he will redeem you, good. Let him do it. But if he is not willing to redeem you, then as the Lord lives, I will redeem you. Lie down until morning. So Boaz is willing to be Ruth's champion, but being a man of noble character himself, he knows there is another man who is more closely related to Ruth and Naomi, who is first in line to be their kinsman redeemer. He promises her that she and Naomi will be redeemed, either by the closer relative or by Boaz. The phrase, "as the Lord lives," means this is a promise that can be counted on as a guarantee. So she lay at his feet until morning, but arose before anyone could recognize another. And he said, "Let it not be known that a woman came to the threshing floor." And he said, "Bring the garment you are wearing and hold it out." So she held it out, her cloak, and he measured 6 measures of barley and put it on her, and she went into the city. Although nothing immoral has occurred, Boaz is very sensitive about preserving Ruth's reputation. Why, rumors could have been turned an innocent event, into a scandal if a woman was observed near Boaz leaving the threshing floor. Before she leaves, Boaz gives her a gift of 3 measures of barley. And when she came home to her mother-in-law, she said, "How did you fare? How did it go, my daughter?" And she told her all that the man had done for her, saying, "These 6 measures of barley he gave me? For me," he said, "you must not go back empty-handed to your mother-in-law." And she replied, "Oh, wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest until settles the matter today." Naomi was eager to hear how Boaz responded to Ruth's request, especially since her fate was at stake. Once Ruth tells her everything and shows her the gift, Naomi knows that they will have an answer that very day. So, chapter 3, "You will be redeemed," is Boaz's guarantee at the threshing floor in Ruth chapter 3. Well, in Ruth chapter 4, we're going to, of course, see Boaz, who was a relative of Naomi's husband and is described as a worthy man. We'll also meet the first Redeemer. This man also was a relative of Naomi's husband, who was even more closely related than Boaz. And Boaz will speak to that first Redeemer at the gate of Bethlehem. Boaz redeems Ruth. Now Boaz had gone up to the gate and sat down there. And behold, the Redeemer, of whom Boaz had spoken, came by. So Boaz said, "Turn aside, friend, sit down here." And he turned aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, "Sit down here." So they sat down. People would pass through the gates of the city to draw water or connect with the city leadership. It was a place for people to gather and conduct business. Boaz calls together 10 elders of the town. 10 men were required quorum to start synagogue, and this was probably the standard number for conducting business. Verse 3, "Then he said to the Redeemer, Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in the presence of these sitting here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me, that I may know, for there is no one besides you to redeem it, and then I come after you." And he said, the Redeemer, "I will redeem it." Well, Naomi had been trying to sell her land to generate income to live on. Her land was the only thing of value she had left. And Boaz offers the land to the next of kin, who, according to custom, has the responsibility to redeem it for the sake of the family. Assuming the property only belongs to Naomi, and that his obligation would be to purchase the land. The close relatives agrees to buy the land from Naomi. Then Boaz says, "The day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you also acquire Ruth, the Moabite, the widow of the dead, in order to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance." And the Redeemer said, "I cannot redeem it for himself, lest I impair my own inheritance. Take the right of redemption yourself, for I can't redeem it." See, Boaz informs the relative that not only would he be required to buy the land, but he would need to take Ruth as a wife to preserve the name of her deceased husband, meaning he would have to provide for her and any children that were produced in the marriage, and that the land acquired from Naomi would stay with the son born to Ruth in the name of her dead husband. Why, that was more responsibility than he was willing to take on. Verse 9. Well, and then Boaz said to the elders of the people, "You are all witnesses this day that I have bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech, and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. Also, Ruth the Moabite, the widow of Mahlon, I have bought to be my wife, to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brothers, and from the gate of the native place. You are witnesses to this day." And then the people who were at the gate, the elders said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you act worthily in Ephrath and be renowned in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring that the Lord will give you by this young woman." Oh, the witnesses of this event are so pleased that they proclaim blessings for Ruth, like the blessings of Rachel and Leah, who produced the 12 sons from whom all of Israel descended. It is evidence that the people think very highly of both Boaz and Ruth and want them to experience the best. Interestingly, they mention Tamar. Remember, we are in the land of Judah. Boaz was a descendant of Judah. Tamar found herself in the same situation as Ruth, a childless widow waiting for someone to redeem her and carry on the name of her deceased husband. Through deceitful acts, Tamar was redeemed, leading to the birth of Perez, an ancestor of Boaz. Verse 13. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And he went into her, and the Lord gave her conception. And she bore a son. And the women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a redeemer, and may his name be renowned in Israel." Poof! Ruth and Boaz marry, and the Lord blesses them with a son. Oh, and the women now credit this child as a descendant of Naomi because of the kinsman redeemer. The child has taken away any shame or bitterness of a childless family. The child will bring great joy to Naomi in the aftermath of so much death. And when the male child grows up, he will provide for the family. He shall be to you a restorer of life, a nourisher in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you, is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him. Oh, Naomi took the child and laid him on her lap and became his nurse. Oh, it's such a happy ending. And the women of the neighborhood gave him the name, saying, "A son has been born to Naomi." The name Obed. he was the father of Jesse, the father of David. King David, King David. Naomi is so different by the end of this book than who we first met in chapter 1. Naomi has her grandson on her lap, and the women of the city surround her. And why they named the baby Obed? The name Obed means servant, possibly suggesting that he will serve and take care of Naomi in her old age. Oh, but in that final sentence, we read where this book has been leading. The greatest king of Israel will ever know, a man after God's own heart. David is the actual descendant of Boaz and Ruth. Oh, it's just such a happy ending. So much better than the book of Judges. Well, Ruth 4 starts off in 18. The genealogy of David. Now these are the generations of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Amminadab. Amminadab fathered Nahshon. Nahshon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. And Jesse fathered David. This genealogy traces the family line from Perez, the son of Judah, to King David through the marriage of Ruth's kinsman redeemer. A king would be born. And we follow the lineage of that king in the book of Matthew to the birth of the king who would be the redeemer of all mankind. Can you imagine her feeling a little silly for ever calling herself bitter or Mara? Oh my, she is blessed. She is joyful. This book of Ruth is started with a problem and a solution type format. The first 2 chapters set up the complexity of the problem. Naomi and Ruth are both without husbands and children and must face the reality of starvation unless they can personally figure out how to make a living. But to no avail, they themselves can't protect themselves or offer security. That has to be offered by someone else. But in the last 2 chapters, they reveal the possible solution to their seemingly insurmountable struggles. The path to attain relief will not be easy, and it's packed with temptations and trials, but the characters we have already met have learned to love and continue to act honorably and nobly. Every situation in which Naomi and Ruth or Boaz could have taken advantage of the other or seek their own best interest will provide a fresh opportunity to demonstrate strength of character and personal integrity. It would be as refreshing to observe their exemplary conduct in our own day as it must have been during the time of the judges. God brings people into his family. Ruth was a Moabite, not an Israelite. Boaz's mom was Rahab, who protected the Israelite spies in her home in Jericho. Why, the son of an outsider marries an outsider, and their child is a descendant whose descendant will be King David, and one of those descendants will be King Jesus. God welcomes the outsider and makes them part of his family. I love that. Well, a kingdom of God to restore by descendants of Boaz in Ruth chapter 4. Well, I did find a cartoon or two. Let's see. Well, Boaz, the land is tempting, but I'll have to pass on a wife at the loss of the inheritance. Cool. I get it. All that. And one of your sandals. It's my lucky day. Well, I don't know if you know, but in business transactions in those days, they didn't shake hands. They didn't high five. You know how they sealed a transaction? They gave each other their shoe. That seems kind of silly. So now he's got one shoe and he's got the other. And then Boaz gave him one of his sandals. No, he's holding the sandal out. No way, man. No way. I'm not touching your sandal until after I've talked to my lawyer. Well, if you're in my class, guys, homework for this week is going to be study guide questions for Judges chapters 15 and 16. Also, review your chapter heading cards for Joshua chapters 1 through 24, Judges chapters 1 through 21, and Ruth 1 through 4. That will help you remember everything we've covered. I'm so proud of you and your hard work and all of the lessons. I love that we end on such a pleasant and happy example of people who were faithful to God as opposed to all the sadness we saw in Judges. Until next time, bye-bye.